Hey everyone, it's Roger with a navigation video to help you work your way through Module 5. As you can see, I'm logged onto my Canvas site and I've scrolled down to where Module 4 and 5 meet. Before we get into the content and the curriculum of Module 5, what I want to do is I want to work backwards and I want to start with your integration assignment here. So I'm going to go ahead and click into this assignment. You can see the prompt is presented for you right here, and there's two ways to submit. Either way, we really recommend that you write this out on a separate document and save it, and then from there, either upload it or cut and paste it into the submission box in Canvas. So, write it out on a separate Word doc, save it as a Word file or a PDF and upload it, or write it on a separate file and then copy and paste it directly into the submission box. Either way, it'll totally get to me. And so in class, we've already studied students like Maria, who immigrated to the United States at the age of 12. And we've also studied students like Jasmine, who experienced racial microaggressions before, during, and after school, but also carry a ton of trauma into the classroom with her. And so these two student stories really kind of shed light on the ways in which policies that really center high stakes testing may not well represent the intellect or the experiences or the academic promises of students. And so we know policies like No Child Gets Left Behind increase the value of standardized tests, and these are tests that hold accountable students, teachers, districts, and are totally linked to things like school funding and to a certain extent school survival itself. And so you could choose two of the three students. We've went over Maria and Jasmine already. And so in Module 5, I want you to work your way through Pablo's story. So again, you'll need the RISGA text and you'll be working and reading through page 123 to 152. And so let me go ahead and go back to our modules here. And so in addition to No Child Gets Left Behind, we're in an era of quote unquote accountability where we're beginning to see the practices of public education move more towards the private sector. It was this idea that the private sector can create more competition, the private sector can create more incentives, and it was this idea that the private sector and the market system was a solution to school performance. And so, in addition to things like No Child Gets Left Behind, what you can see is I've posted an article around a new administration with a new Secretary of Education. And so, one of the things that I want you to read through here is this school voucher advocate kind of program. And what the new Secretary of Education is presenting is this idea that if parents are unsatisfied with district schools and they're paying property taxes, they should be able to take that $12,000 that they pay a year in property tax, and they should be able to take it and spend it on a private school of their choice. And so while this is not really about No Child Gets Left Behind, it couches well into this larger kind of experience and movement of accountability and privatization of public education. One of the other things that I think add to your integration assignment is to understand charter schools. And so charter schools aren't necessarily good or bad, right? You can have great students, you can have great teachers at charter schools, but the schools themselves are authorized by school districts to be able to run curriculum and education in uniquely different ways. And what this means is that they're not going to be regulated by the same things that public schools in traditional districts are regulated by. And so I want you to read this article by Tarenda White. It's a pretty short article. It's about 20 pages, and it helps kind of understand some of the other outcomes of this movement. And so No Child Gets Left Behind is one of the major federal policies, but locally what we're seeing is it's also impacting the way districts run if students are not, quote unquote, performing at annual yearly progress. 5.3 has just an update on the Atlanta cheating scandal that we looked at. And you can kind of hear teachers kind of speak back about the pressures of things like No Child Gets Left Behind and how that really kind of put undue pressure on teachers and students themselves. To help support the chapter on Jasmine, I also want you to go ahead and take a look at this film that you can link to on Canopy. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. So what I want you to do is I want you to log on to laneycanopy.com. You'll log in using your student ID and your password. You'll go ahead and just type The Raising of America into the search box for the film. And then the film is a 5-part series. I want you to watch episode 4, which features Oakland. And so the title of this is going to be Wounded Places, Confronting Childhood PTSD in America's Shell-Shocked Cities. And so again, we're thinking about how something like PTSD couples with these new policies around testing accountability and the ways that the tests may not actually represent the experiences of the students. And so within this context, I want you to think about students like Pablo. And so after reading Christina Rizga's chapter on Pablo, I want you to think about LGBTQ students and No Child Gets Left Behind. And so one thing that you can do is click on to this PowerPoint presentation. I have it on my desktop here, and I'll go ahead and pull it up. And in this PowerPoint presentation, I've chose some vignettes from the Rizga text. I've sourced some academic research journals, and I'm making references back to some of the policies that we've studied in the past. So if you scroll through it, you can see that I'll grab some things out of Rizga, and then I'll also do some things around offering you some data, national data as well as local data on what's happening with LGBTQ students. And so go ahead and work through this PowerPoint presentation on lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer students. And think about the ways that race, gender, and sexuality all kind of create experiences that make learning difficult for students, let alone performing well on standardized tests. And so it's a short PowerPoint presentation, and I'm hoping that some of the things like here, Pablo's solutions to some of the things that happen in his schools can help you through this paper. But notice things that are interventions to things like race, gender, homophobia, sexism. These aren't necessarily actually funded by federal policies like No Child Gets Left Behind. Certainly, low-income schools that serve low-income neighborhoods and low-income students are called Title I schools and are eligible for federal funds, but the federal government isn't exactly offering guidance or support in making sure that trauma, homophobia, sexism, racism are things that are being addressed that really can help students perform well in classes and then maybe also in standardized tests. And we know that we can critique standardized tests and their cultural relevance, but in general, what I want you to do in this assignment is really think about how these identities that are not being addressed in school policies and not being addressed through school funding are changing the ways that students have relationships to education and relationships to testing. And so one of the end slides here that I'll kind of show you is that there aren't any federal protections for K-12 LGBTQ students. Senators have proposed them, but still we don't see anything from the federal government that guarantees any protections or funding. Most of the local school districts or the states have to come up with this by themselves. And so I'll go ahead and close this down. And so for Module 5, what I want you to do is I want you to work your way through some of these new policies and some of these new contexts. And in the same way we couched Maria and Jasmine's experience within No Child Gets Left Behind, I want you to couch Pablo's experience within that context as well, but also knowing that there's a larger movement around privatization of education, which really focuses on the outcome of testing. And if there's a heavy focus on the outcome of testing, I want you to kind of think about in your paper, right? How does that put students that bring a ton of trauma, a ton of oppressive experiences into the classroom? And that's kind of what I want you to center on this paper. And so back to integration assignment 1, please pick 2 of the students. Please source the Rizga text as well as you can. So that means using quotes, sourcing page numbers, and making sure that you're separating your writing, meaning what your analysis is and what Rizga's presentation is. Make sure that those things are separate. And so I also would like you to make sure that you're kind of naming some of the policies and really contextualizing their experiences within a larger movement of testing. And so feel free to use any of the resources here or any of the lectures in the past. And that means you can go all the way up to some module 3.2 when we kind of think about this idea of neoliberalism in education. So as always, please message me on Canvas or send me an email if you have any questions. Good luck on this assignment, and I will see you all soon.